All right. So next topic that we're going to talk about is program policies and procedures. Bear with me for 1 second here. Just bear with me for 1 second here. Okay, so I apologize for that. So program policies and procedures. That's the next topic that we're going to go over. So failure to plan is a plan for failure. So good policies are clear, concise, and simple, but they're also specific in language. And they're consistent and logical. They communicate expectations, and they address the question of what should be done and by whom. So when we develop good policies, we want to define who, what, where, when, and why it is to be done. We want to offer alternatives and examples. We want to incorporate federal regulations, grant terms and conditions, and other program requirements. And we want to constantly look at the our policies that we developed and revise when necessary. So some agenda items that I want to go over that I'm going to be covering with this is we're going to go over timekeeping, teleservice, I mentioned that earlier, and evaluation, compelling personal circumstances, and other important policies. So for timekeeping, we want to make sure that we want to keep good time and attendance records um, that are used to document member eligibility for in-service and post-service benefits. So there is that's an important thing that we'll discuss later on. Um, it has to be compliant with this federal regulation. Um, so we want to, timekeeping is very important. Some timekeeping requirements. Let's take a closer look. We want to ensure that time and attendance is conducted and recorded by AmeriCorps members, supervisors with real electronic signatures by both. We want to retain time records for at least 7 years. Very important. We want to keep time records for at least 7 years and make them available for review by monitors or auditors. And those people can include the commission, um, the uh, the host agency, the Office of Children and Family Services, AmeriCorps at the federal level, and also the Office of Inspector General at the from AmeriCorps at the federal level. We want to make sure that we differentiate between member service, training, and fundraising hours. We want to be able to separate those three things. We want to record them differently, and we want to record actual time spent by program staff working on an AmeriCorps grant. And keep in mind that reimbursements are not based on budgeted amounts. And we want to distinguish expenses associated with different contract periods or program years. So these are some recommendations. We want to establish a minimum of hourly requirement for members to receive their living allowances, and that's even something that we would find right on the the recruitment, the posting to recruit for members. We want to establish and implement clear procedures for supervising, recording, verifying, and reporting member service hours. So let's talk about teleservice. This always seems to be a popular topic among program staff. Um, what is teleservice? Teleservice relates to members serving from their home or off-site for their normal service locations, from their normal service locations when a supervisor is unable to be physically present. So although teleservice is allowable, typically AmeriCorps discourages teleservice because of its increased risk for time and attendance abuse. However, the AmeriCorps recognizes that, ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, um, is the pandemic's kind of changed the landscape of work and how people work and it also affects service in our communities. And so it's something that, program needs to there are resources. There are AmeriCorps has these two resources to develop your teleservice policy. You want to make sure that there's written pre-authorization of teleservice hours. There's expectations of communication requirements between supervisors and teleserving members. Um, you want to decrease the risk of time and attendance abuse. You want to make sure that the appropriate supervision is there, including the validation of the activities performed. Want to make sure that the hours are verified. And it's also important to update your insurance coverage to address any legal liability that may result from teleservice. Does anyone have any questions at all? I'm not able to see them in the chat, so.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
What would be a legal liability of teleservice? I don't know if that's like a stumping question or not, but
That seems to be something that comes up in all the material from AmeriCorps. That I don't think they really give any examples, but insurance liability seems to be something. Does any commission staff, can they think of any insurance liability that will be covered for teleservice? I was kind of wondering that myself when
I feel like a lot of the literature is kind of naming that if you can't supervise members in their service, it's kind of like an accountability mechanism to make sure that they're effectively serving and doing the things that their position description says they're doing. That's a really good question though, Molly. YL also has another question in the chat, Eric.
Can you read it for me, Casey? I can't see it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm sorry, I forgot. YL said percentage of training hours. Is it 20% for the whole team or per member?
I can answer that. That's for the whole core. It's a cumulative number. So yeah, if you had a core of 2 and one person was at 40%, the other was at 0, you'd be okay because you'd be at 20. So it's 20 for the whole core. But that rule, I don't want to get ahead of us, but that rule is supposed to be going away. So just FYI, but it's still there for now. So
Yep, all this material is current for now. They're not to let the cat out of the box, as Michael was suggesting, but in October there'll be some changes. So, and we'll have updated material for when October comes. So, but all this material that I'm presenting right now is current as of this month. So, any other questions?
A quick question. I just
Sure.
want to make sure I'm clear on teleservice. So there's really no limit. It's the matter of having the correct policies in place and oversight and verification of the hours worked. Is that correct? Because we do have some folks who their business model is now remote. Their entire staff is remote, and they do services virtually. Everything is verified and monitored. So in that regard, if we bring an AmeriCorps member into that landscape, is that okay as long as they're subject to the same type of oversight and verification of hours?
Michael, could you answer that?
yeah, I'm just gonna have to I apologize because I've been out of the office for a few months on parental leave, so I just got to kind of refamiliarize myself with the policy. So AmeriCorps does make a distinction between virtual service and remote service and teleservice. So you have to kind of be careful, what exactly is the member doing? So I'd have to kind of just look at those definitions again real quick, but maybe I could put it in the chat after. But essentially, it can't be completely remote, it can't be completely virtual. But I'll double check and I'll post that link so that we have that there. So I don't know if anybody else has that more.
I checked all of our material for this as I was developing it, and I didn't see any changes in our teleservice. So Michael actually covered this topic extensively, I believe, in our January monthly meeting. And these two resources come from that January meeting, and from what I could see, I could not see any changes in AmeriCorps teleservice regulations or requirements since the information from Michael presented it during our January monthly meeting. There's I think there's actually like a memo from like March 2023 or something like that. No, April 2023. And it doesn't look like any of the
Eric, I think we lost you. Anybody else still able to hear him?
I think he's frozen. Okay, Michael, I'll look for the link. I did
Yeah,
take
and
a look at it as well, and I noticed that sometimes those terms get conflated, the virtual, the remote, and the teleservice.
Yeah,
So I wanted to make that distinction. I know some of it has to do with geographic location of the member as to the site. Some of it has to do, right, with service, and then others is relative to the policy that Eric just went over. So I just wanted to make sure I was
yeah,
um,
yeah. It's important
making that
because
distinction because
yeah, AmeriCorps
overlap.
does have its, as Eric kind of mentioned earlier, AmeriCorps has its own language in a way, and a lot of that has to do with like being able to classify members and the service that they're doing. I did just pull up the memo that had the definitions. Uh, so these are AmeriCorps definitions. Remote service, which is not permitted, is defined as an arrangement in which an AmeriCorps member is not located within the commuting area of the geographic community where the service is to occur and is not expected to be physically present at the service site and or community events. So if you operate out of Buffalo, but your member lives in Westchester, that sounds like remote service, and that would not be allowed if they're not ever in the area. And then virtual service is also not permitted. And that refers to organizations that do not have a physical location. So if you're just completely a website, a member, according to AmeriCorps' rules, wouldn't be allowed to serve in that setting. They have to have some ability to be providing direct service, and they should be in the area at least, not if not every day, something reasonable where they're sort of in the area. I guess it would kind of, if you have like questions about whether this would qualify because they're in the area a certain amount of times, just run it by us and we can maybe, shoot it over to AmeriCorps also to get some cover. But that's how they define those two terms. So remote service, virtual service are not allowed, but teleservice, which is something sort of like a hybrid situation where they're providing direct service, maybe several days of pay period, and then maybe other days they're doing like reporting or they've done data collection while they were serving, and then they're doing reports or analysis on other days or making phone calls as part of their service, depending on what they're doing. That's permitted, but you have to have clear policies. And so Eric has up on the screen those parameters there with written authorization, expectations, mitigation of time and attendance abuse. And I think like Casey mentioned, that's kind of what they're getting at with the liability of when you have people working remotely, it becomes easier to sort of fudge a timesheet and say I did 3 hours of service this day, but really they were just home. And so that's really what that's getting at. So it's important to have thought this through, like at the beginning of your year, and come up with parameters that kind of mitigates against some of these potential issues.
And we do foresee changes in October. I can't remember what those changes are right now.
Yeah, I
Um,
had to look. Sorry that again, like it's not like right at my fingertips, but I did look at it. The 20% rule is the one that is going to be going away as of October 1st for this upcoming program year. So yeah, period. So that 20% cap is actually going to go away for this year. So you could potentially introduce more training opportunities for your members.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Teresa, do you have anything else to add? Did that answer your question, or?
No,
does
that
anyone
does
else have-
answer my question. I mean, we reviewed the policy internally here as well. And, as I said, sometimes the terminology gets conflated, even when it's being
Definitely.
explained to us. So we just wanted to clarify, and we had counsel look over it as well. So we're clear on it. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Definitely. Does anyone else have any questions about teleservice?
I see a question in the chat, Eric, about what percentage of teleservice is allowed, and there isn't a specific established percentage like there was or is currently up until October 1st related to training. So again, it's just kind of like a judgment call and it needs to be reasonable, but I would reach out to your program administrator at the commission, if you have any questions or any doubt, like whether the, situation that you're trying to set up, it would fit within the regulations. And we can kind of take a look at it and, like I say, get some cover from AmeriCorps, maybe run the situation by them and just make sure that they don't see it as prohibited.
Was there another question on the chat?
Yeah, I see. Hold on, lost it. Can we have more than one contract for the same service year? Can we have more than 4 contracts for a member? When you say contracts, do you mean like an agreement with the member service agreement? I don't know if you want to take yourself off mute or.
They say yes.
Yes. Yeah, so a member can serve multiple terms within a program year. That is allowable. Currently, there is a cap of 4 service terms a member can serve. That is one of the areas that's being examined by this new rule, though, and I think there's still some question about what that will actually mean when and if they lift that cap. That hasn't really been clarified for us yet, but regardless, that's not going to apply to this upcoming program year. That won't go into effect until program year 2025. So as of right now, it's just a member can serve up to 4 terms and they can earn up to 2 full-time education awards. So those 4 terms could be 4 full-time terms. They could be, 2 half-time, 2 full-time. Right now there's no limit as far as like the different types of terms. It's just that they can do 4 and they can earn up to 2 full-time ed awards. So if someone did like a part-time term early in the year, they want to keep going. Maybe they did like a minimum time term and then they want to do a half-time term. They could do that within the same year as long as they can get it done within your contract period. So the different program years are broken up into contract periods, 15-month periods. So they have to be able to finish within that time frame, but they could do more than one.
Thank you for that, Mike.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Am I missing something?
So I do see another one regarding training hour percentage. A member doing a shorter term could have 100% training hours count for their service. I suppose in theory, like once the cap is lifted, then technically, but it's not really in line with the spirit of AmeriCorps, I would say. Like, I mean, AmeriCorps members are meant to do meant to do service. Training is meant to be a component of it because it's supposed to provide professional development for them while they do the service. So it kind of benefits them and the community. If all they're doing is training, then I don't know, maybe you can make a case for how that is sort of service to the community, but it seems like that would sort of be lacking there. So again, these are kind of things like if you have a situation like that or like kind of a unique opportunity for individuals and you want to kind of run it by us, there's some gray area within the terms and conditions. So we'd have to kind of look at it. But on the face of it, I'd say it probably would receive some resistance because members are supposed to do most of their term is meant to be direct service. And up until just recently, they're just starting to consider removing that restriction or removing that requirement or the cap of 20%. So yeah, I can't say yes or no. Like, I guess technically once the cap is gone, then I guess that would be technically okay. But it's again, kind of like not in line with what AmeriCorps was meant to do. I don't know if any other staff has a comment on that, but that's just where I'd leave it for now. And then I see there's a question about using America Learns as timesheet system. Is this considered as timekeeping records? America Learns is a good system. Yeah, I know other programs use it. So I've never actually been in the system, but I know that it works and it's compliant with the regulations for AmeriCorps timekeeping systems.
Definitely. Any other questions?
That's all I saw in the chat. I don't know if anybody else sees anything.
Going once, going twice. All right, so let's do a poll question. All right, so we're gonna have a poll question. Does AmeriCorps permit teleservice? So, 1 second here. Yes. I'm not gonna bother opening up the poll itself. Well, actually, hold on a second. So yes, go ahead and throw your answer. We all kind of know what it is already, but yes, does AmeriCorps permit teleservice? So hopefully everyone will get the right answer. So just gonna give everyone a short moment here just to throw in their correct answer. All right, I'm gonna close the poll. So of course, yes, yes is the correct answer. So, yeah, very good. Okay, good job, everyone. So moving on here. So let's talk evaluation. So evaluation is what we give to our AmeriCorps members. It's supposed to be scientifically based. Um, no, I'm sorry. Evaluation is what you use to look at how successful your program is in addressing the community needs. Um, it uses scientifically based research methods, and there are different types of evaluation. There's a program. There's those intended to establish a relationship between uh, what the program is doing and the desired outcomes. And there are member evaluations as well, um, to determine whether or not the member has successfully completed their service term. And we're going to be talking a lot more about program evaluations near the end of this training. So in September. So we're gonna exhaust that subject. So stay tuned. So and then of course there's the regulations right there. So talking very briefly about program evaluation. It's based on the type of funding. Um, so in the question, there's a question in the chat about program evaluation. Um, did anyone catch that in the chat?
Yeah, it looks like the question here is for member evaluation, do we have a standard evaluation items, or is it open for each program to come up with evaluation metrics? So if I'm understanding, and you might want to clarify what you mean when you say member evaluation, you might be confusing that with the performance or the, yeah, we could say performance evaluation of the member versus the program evaluation. So those are two separate topics. And I think we cover at some point today the requirements for member evaluation.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, Anthony is our in-house expert on program evaluation. And he has 2 sessions in September that he'll be going over that exhaustively, if that's a word. But in this presentation, just summarizing, there's 2 different types of evaluation. There's program and there's member, and the requirements for the program, where the program uses an evaluation to assess how effectively it's addressing community needs. That's based on the type of funding and also the type of a grant. It's based on it's based on the size of the grant. $500,000 per year is it changes what type of evaluation you'll use. It looks at the program history. In the first year of the grant cycle, there's data collection and planning. There's no evaluation. In the second year of your 3-year grant cycle, which we'll talk about hopefully later on, there's an evaluation plan that's required with your application, and the evaluation is completed during this cycle. And then for each subsequent cycle after that, there's a report that's required with your application, and you'll have a new evaluation plan that builds on the previous evaluations that your program used. And like I said, we'll cover this in greater detail. There's a link for resources right there. Of course, this will be in the handbook. As far as member evaluation, when a program determines how successful their member service year was, members are only eligible to serve a subsequent term of service if they receive the satisfactory performance evaluation for any previous term of service. End of term evaluation should consist of a determination of whether the member has successfully completed the required term of service. They've served the hours that they needed to, was released from service for compelling personal circumstances, and we'll discuss this next week. Was released for service for cause making the member ineligible to receive an education award. A performance, you'll want to conduct a review to assess if the member has successfully completed their assignments, their tasks, or projects, and if they've met any other criteria clearly communicated at the beginning of the term of service. So just briefly, let's talk about compelling personal circumstances, and we're going to discuss this again in another session. But AmeriCorps members may exit service early for only 2 reasons: for cause or compelling personal circumstances. Programs determine whether compelling personal circumstances, which are conditions attributed to the program or otherwise unforeseeable conditions beyond the member's control, prevented a member from completing a term of service. If a member completes at least 15% of a term and is exited with compelling personal circumstances, the member is eligible for a partial education award. And that this regulation right here goes into the specifics of what circumstances an AmeriCorps member may be released from completing a time of service, and what would those consequences be. So compelling personal circumstances may include, but this is, this is just there may be other reasons as well, but they include military service obligations, opportunities for members to transition from welfare to work, disability or serious illness, natural disaster, strikes, relocation of a spouse, premature.
Oh no.
I'm sure he'll be back.
Send him love. Maybe. There he is.
Oh, going in and out. Does anyone have any questions?
Maybe just to clarify that that question in the chat there, do we have a standard evaluation items? So the 2 slides that, or 2 slides previous that Eric you had up, if you could put that back up. Those are the components that your statutorily your member evaluation should include. And correct me if I'm wrong, program staff, but we don't have like a standard form, right? It's as long as that. Could you go back a couple of slides there, Eric? One more. Yeah. Yep. Evaluation requirements. So as long as a program's evaluation of members are covering those items listed there, then it meets the standard of what AmeriCorps requires for member evaluations.
Yeah, that's correct, Anthony. And you can, as a program, you can adapt those to fit your needs. Also, if you have other areas where you want to evaluate members, then that's fine. And that's why we don't have like one standard template, considering all the different program models and objectives of your different programs. But that's just the minimum that you need to meet per the AmeriCorps regulations.
Excellent. All right, so I have another poll question. So which is not a, wait, hold on a second. I'm gonna open a poll. Which is not not a compelling personal circumstance? That is the poll question. Which is not a personal compelling circumstance? Is it military service? Is it a family reunion? Is it disability? Or natural disaster, which is not a compelling personal circumstance? Military service, family reunion, disability, or natural disaster? Let's see there. Over half of everyone have finished. Which is not a compelling personal circumstance? Gotta use your memory. Knew we threw a lot at you. I'm gonna give everyone just 10 more seconds. Which is not a compelling personal circumstance? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll here. All right. Is everyone able to see the poll results? So the correct. Let's see. Correct answer is family reunion. So it looks like everyone got that correct. All right, excellent. Good job, everyone. Nice work. All right, let's go back to the slides. All right. So, other important policies. Member recruitment and enrollment. Very important. National Service criminal history checks, and we'll be covering that topic in a greater detail in another session. Program monitoring and management, host site selection and management, recording and documenting grant income and expenses. That includes budgeting, cost allocation, reimbursement, matching requirements, financial reporting. So these things will be covered in greater detail in other sessions. So for example, recording and documenting grant income and expenses, that we'll be covering that in greater detail with the financial management session. Post selection and management will be covering in I believe in one of the sessions next week. So we have templates and more information related to all that to help you develop your policies. So, all right. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Is there anything in the chat, anybody? Going once. Anyone have any questions? Going twice. What is the procedure for finishing a member contract due to poor performance or poor timekeeping? That is an excellent question. We'll be covering that in another session, but go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, sure. I'll just jump in. I think this kind of ties back to what Eric was saying earlier about policies and procedures. So this is why we strongly encourage AmeriCorps subgrantees to establish their procedures. So, we're going to have sort of minimum requirements, and we've covered a lot of that. But then at your agency, you're likely going to have more specific policies related to, member attendance, member leave, their requirements as far as timekeeping, et cetera. So, I would just encourage you to come up with a policy at your agency, whether that's sort of like a, first time warning, second time formal meeting, come up with a form, whatever, your agency might do. And then just make sure it's written and included in all your AmeriCorps materials, and I would include it also in a member service agreement so that a member is clear upfront as to what the expectations are. And then, you just need to follow that policy during the term. If you have a member that is, performing poorly and you've gone through your procedure, then, you have the discretion to release that member for cause. And, we'll be talking about like how you technically exit someone from the system, but you would just essentially exit them. And when you exit them, you indicate that they were released for cause, rather than, as Eric said, the other way to be exited early is with compelling personal circumstances. And then it's just kind of basically a different indication in the e-grant system when you're exiting them. So you'd either choose cause or compelling personal circumstances, and then you got to have documentation for either choice, really. And then that documentation should be compliant with your policies, which should be compliant with the rules and regs. Hopefully that makes sense, but feel free to ask any other questions you might have. If a member is released for cause, does this hurt your agency in any way with AmeriCorps? No, not necessarily. I mean, it kind of depends on the situation. I mean, I think AmeriCorps, our office, we understand that sometimes situations don't work out. Sometimes individuals don't work out in their service opportunities. Yeah, so if it's not a blatant case of mismanagement or some kind of negligence on part of your agency, then it shouldn't reflect necessarily poorly on you. I don't know if any other admins have anything to say on that, but that's what I would say.
I think it's worth mentioning that there is a retention percentage metric that it's not really going, as far as I know, it's not going to impact any future grant decisions, but it is something that is a part of reporting. Your enrollment percentage and your retention and early exits would be taken into consideration just as a way to see how your program is performing and retaining members, with the understanding that sometimes things happen that are out of a program's control when it comes to member performance. And exiting a member for a cause is not out of the ordinary or unusual, but there is that retention metric that is tracked. But again, it shouldn't affect grant decisions or anything like that.
Yeah, that's correct. There's no like direct correlation to a program's retention rate and their ability to get a grant. It's just if in our monitoring, what might happen if you had consistently a high or consistently a low retention rate. It might just be an area that we as a commission might want to look at and maybe provide some guidance and maybe try to help you develop better procedures or et cetera. Just kind of ask you to focus in on that, right? Just to improve that, because the expectation is that you retain all the members, but we understand that that's not always possible.
Does anyone have any other questions? All right. So you know what? Why don't we take a quick break? Why don't we take a 15-minute break? If we can come back at like 11:16, that would be super. And then we'll dive in one of the most important topics having to do with AmeriCorps. So, all right. So I'll see you folks back here, say 11:16, 11:17, 11:17. Yeah. I'll give you 15 minutes. Stretch, go to the bathroom. All right. Thank you.